Today I will be starting a new series, What If Goku Wasn't Invincible? If you end up enjoying the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. As of right now, I have many ideas written down. If you guys have any suggestions, write them down in the comments and maybe in the future I can make them. Now, onto the story. In this story, I will not be taking the canon Dragon Ball Super Goku and throwing him in the world of Invincible. Instead, we begin the divergence from Dragon Ball's original timeline when Bardock and Gine say their final goodbyes. In the pod carrying their infant son blasts off into space towards Earth, something goes wrong. A rift in space and time opens. Whether caused by cosmic interference or a fluctuation in the timeline itself is unclear, and swallows the pod. Yes, we're going with the classic portal time rift route. Instead of arriving in the Dragon Ball version of Earth, the pod crash lands in a different universe entirely. This Earth is far more grounded in realism, and the superhero world is far more brutal and unforgiving. The pod crash lands a few months after the birth of Mark Grayson, right in the backyard of the Grayson's residence. Nolan hears the crash first. Alert and cautious, he rushes outside, followed closely by Akira's Debbie. The backyard is scorched from the impact, and in their center lies a spherical pod, hissing, steaming, and clearly alien in nature. It opens slowly, revealing a young child dressed in Saiyan battle armor. No older than an infant, his black spiky hair and brown tail are the most distinctive features. Debbie, although startled, is immediately sympathetic. A baby from space has landed in their backyard, and to her, this is not just a strange event, it was a sign. Nolan, on the other hand, is confused. In all his centuries of life across countless systems, he has never seen a child like this before. Debbie picks up the baby. The moment is oddly tender. Despite her confusion, she only sees a child in need. She urges Nolan to keep the boy, to adopt him, and raise him alongside Mark. After a moment of hesitation, Nolan agrees. It's just a child after all. What harm can it do? And so, the same child is taken in and raised by the Graysons. 3 years have passed. The boy grows rapidly. His strength and durability become increasingly apparent. While Mark is still just learning to talk, the alien child is already running, jumping, and much to no surprise, showing combat instincts far beyond what he'd expect. Debbie names him, but the boy eventually speaks his true name, Kakarot. Kakarot has retained his sane instincts, having never suffered from the head injury that altered his nature in the original timeline. He is aggressive, proud, and obsessed with fighting, but not evil. More than anything, he wants to test himself, to grow, to fight worthy opponents. Despite his rough nature, Debbie's nurturing and Nolan's training mold Kakarot into a unique individual. He was relentless in battle, but caring towards those he considers family. As he enters adolescence, Kakarot begins to stand out. While Mark struggles with school and waits for his powers to awaken, Kakarot is already flying, already sparring with Nolan in private, and pushing the boundaries of what the young boy should be capable of. Nolan is impressed, but also cautious. He can sense the untapped power inside Kakarot. The boy was even able to utilize energy in ways Nolan has never seen before. By imitating what he sees on TV, Kakarot involuntarily discovers that he can use his ki to create balls of energy. And that's when the questions begin to rise. Where did this child truly come from? What is the origin of his species? And most importantly, is he a threat? During a night sparring session with the 5-year-old Kakarot, Nolan begins to notice something strange. The boy's movements become more aggressive, and there's a wild, uncontrolled energy behind his strikes. Then, without warning, Kakarot's eyes begin to turn red. His muscles expand, and his expression twists into something purely primal. Before Nolan can react, the boy's body contorts, his mouth extends, and his thick hair begins sprouting all over him. The transformation is violent and fast. Recognizing the danger, Nolan wastes no time. In the blink of an eye, he scoops up the transforming child and soars away from the Grayson's residence, ensuring the safety of his wife and son. They land in a remote, deserted area miles from civilization. When Nolan looks again, the boy is gone, replaced by a towering, monstrous ape. It's not just large, it's massive, brimming with unrestrained power and radiating pure destruction. Kakarot had no sense of self, no control. What now stood before Nolan was the beast driven by instinct and rage, seemingly with one objective: destroy everything in sight. Cecil learned of the situation quickly. The Graysons taking in an alien child wasn't a secret to him, but until now, the child had shown no signs of being a threat. This sudden shift changed everything. They didn't know what the boy truly was or what he was capable of becoming. Back on the battlefield, Nolan struggles to contain the beast. The creature's power was overwhelming, even for him. Each of Kakarot's attacks is laced with raw strength, forcing Nolan on the defensive. It wasn't just that the boy was strong, it was that he had absolutely no restraint, no technique, and care for who or what he was hitting. Nolan begins to realize something terrifying. This child could already rival him physically. The Guardians of the Globe soon arrive, responding to an emergency level threat. They descend on the scene and attempt to support Omni-Man. Nolan quickly informs them of what they were truly up against. That the creature was not some alien monster but a child he was raising. A child who had up until now been a part of their family. The Guardians are confused, but this wasn't just another threat. It was a living, breathing, and out of control child. Despite the hesitation, survival takes precedence. They attack. Kakarot responds with unchecked fury. The immortal is swatted away like a ragdoll. Warwoman suffers the same fate, her mace doing little to phase the creature. Red Rush attempts to disorient him with his rapid strikes, but Kakarot's skin is too dense. His punches do nothing. Darkwing tries to deploy high-tech traps, flashbangs, and distraction gadgets, but none have any lasting impact. Green Ghost and Martian Man did what they can, phasing and shifting. They too were outmatched. Kakarot stomps down on the immortal with bone-crushing force, nearly ending his life. The battlefield is chaos, dust, roars, blast, and panic. Nolan watches, calculating. He thinks back to what may have caused this to happen. When Kakarot turned 5, they would spar more in the night. But this night was different. It was a full moon. Something had triggered a transformation, and possibly it had something to do with that. Nolan thinks of ways he could stop the rampage, and there was one thing that he can think of: the tail. It had been an odd feature since they had found him. It twitched during moments of emotion, it curled when he was happy, stiffened when he was angry. Now it was bristling, pulsing with energy, almost like it was the anchor for the monstrous change. Nolan makes a snap decision. Launching forward, dodging a sweeping arm that could flatten a building, he grabs the tail with both hands. It thrashes. The beast howls. Nolan digs in and, with one final effort, rips it from Kakarot's body. The effect is immediate. Kakarot's body begins to shrink. The fur vanishes and a monstrous form dissipates. In seconds, the giant ape is gone. In its place, lying unconscious in a small crater, is the 5-year-old boy. He's breathing but barely. Exhausted, spent, the rampage was over. The Guardians stand in stunned silence. Some are injured, others barely conscious, but the threat was neutralized. And yet, what remained wasn't comfort, it was fear. Fear of the child, fear of the potential, fear of what might come next. Nolan carries the unconscious Kakarot back home, his mind heavy with thoughts. He had taken this child in, raised him, trained him, and now he knew there were forces at work inside Kakarot that even he couldn't predict or fully understand. This wasn't just another alien. This wasn't just another child. This was something else entirely. By the time Mark turns 17 and his powers begin to awaken, Kakarot is already leagues ahead. He spars with Nolan regularly and has developed his own style of fighting, blending aggression with brutality. The dynamics within the Grayson household evolve over time. Mark looks up to Kakarot as an older brother figure, though he often feels like he's living in his shadow. Debbie sees them as both of her sons, even if one of them has a hunger for combat she'll never truly understand. Nolan, meanwhile, begins to see Kakarot as a variable, an unpredictable element in his long-term mission. Because Nolan's mission hasn't changed. He is still an agent of the Viltrumite Empire. He is still planning for the eventual conquest of Earth. And while Mark was supposed to be part of that plan, Kakarot complicates things. Nolan doesn't know if the boy will side with him or fight him. The day will come when Nolan reveals the truth, when he tells his sons why he's really on Earth. And when that day comes, what will Kakarot do? Will he embrace his inner nature inside with strength or will the love he's felt from Debbie and the bond he's built with Mark cause him to defy his instincts? Only time will tell. At the White House, 2 security guards stood watch, their shift seemingly uneventful. That changed when the ground beneath them started to rumble violently, fissures splitting the pavement as dust and smoke billowed in the air. From deep underground, 2 massive figures emerged, identical, blue-skinned, muscular, and armed. The Mauler twins had arrived. Gunfire erupted as the guards opened fire in desperation. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the Mauler's thick skin. One guard, his hands shaking, managed to shoot one of the twins in the eye, momentarily staggering him. But in that pause, it didn't last long. The wounded Mauler advanced with rage in an expression, ready to kill. Before the attack could land, help arrived. The Guardians of the Globe descended from the sky, quickly surveying the chaos. They began securing the area, instructing civilians to flee while preparing for battle. One of the twins hurled a screaming woman through the air. Darkwing caught her mid-fall, grappling onto a nearby structure. Just as they hit the ground, one of the twins flung a tank in their direction. With no time to escape, Darkwing used his tech to shield the woman. The tank crashed down with brutal force. It seemed like he was done for. But then, a figure intervened, Kakarot, now a public hero known as Soulstride. Effortlessly, he caught the tank mid-air, his muscles straining as he slowly lowered it. With his help, Darkwing escaped and the woman was safely evacuated. Omni-Man arrived too, coordinating efforts with the Guardians. Kakarot wasted no time. He lunged at one of the Mauler twins with overwhelming speed. His punches shattered sound barriers, and the sheer force of his attacks left craters in the ground beneath them. The Mauler twins tried to fight back, but it was useless. They had no way of defending against someone with Kakarot's raw power. Each strike knocked them down further, until the resistance faded completely. What was supposed to be a bold invasion ended with the villains lying in broken heaps. Meanwhile, at the Grayson household, Mark watched everything unfold on the news. He saw his brother Kakarot on screen alongside their father Omni-Man, and the Guardians. A surge of emotions hit him: admiration, envy, and frustration. Kakarot was already recognized as a hero. Mark, on the other hand, still felt powerless. He was proud of his brother, but that pride came with a sting. Later, Kakarot and Nolan returned home. Their arrival was met with warmth, but Debbie informed them that she and Nolan were headed to Berlin for a quick trip. Mark overheard the news and tried to hide the jealousy creeping in. With nothing else to do, Kakarot and Mark prepared for school. The 2 brothers stepped outside. As they walked, they looked into the sky. Their father soared overhead with their mother in their arms, fading into the clouds. It was a moment that reminded Mark of the growing gap between himself and the rest of his family. The school day began like any other. Mark and Kakarot Grayson made their way through the crowded hallways, walking beside their friend William. Students passed by every direction, some rushing to class, others loitering near her lockers, and as they turned the corner, a commotion caught their attention. Ahead of them, a large student named Todd was hassling a girl, ignoring her protests and grabbing her arm when she tried to walk away. His voice rose above the noise in the hall as he insisted, refusing to let go. The scene drew glances, but no one stepped in. That was until Mark began to move forward. Mark's frustration boiled over. Todd was much larger than him, stronger and aggressive, but Mark couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Just as he was about to intervene, Kakarot stepped forward and gently held him back. Calm and composed, Kakarot moved to face Todd himself. With a confident posture, Kakarot stood between Todd and the girl, his tone measured but firm. Todd, annoyed but full of ego, lashed out. He threw a punch directly at Kakarot's chest, only for his knuckles to collide with what felt like solid iron. The impact shattered several of his bones in Todd's hand instantly. He stumbled back, screaming in pain, clutching his broken fingers. All eyes turned. Students nearby stopped what they were doing, their attention fixed on the confrontation. Todd, red with embarrassment and anger, muttered an insult and stormed off, disappearing into the crowd. The hallway remained silent for a moment longer before murmurs of disbelief echoed through the crowd. William, stunned, made a quick comment about Kakarot's durability, half in awe, and half in confusion. Later, that evening, Mark worked a shift at his part-time job. Out back, he's carried a trash bag to the dumpster, struggling slightly with the weight. As he grabbed the second one, something changed. This time, he effortlessly hurled it farther than he expected, watching in shock as it flew into the air and out of view. His powers had finally awakened. When Mark returned home, he was greeted by the smell of dinner and the warmth of a typical evening. Sitting down, he shared that something unusual had happened during his day. Kakarot listened intently, always the supportive older brother figure. Not long after, Nolan returned from his own mission, this time in Hong Kong, dealing with a rampaging dragon. He took his place in the table, tired but attentive. Mark explained what happened at work and how he threw a trash bag like it was nothing. It was his first real sign that his Viltrumite side had finally awakened. Nolan remained silent at first, his expression unreadable, until Debbie nudged him beneath the table. Then, with a nod, he congratulated his son and told him that training would begin the next day. Kakarot beamed with pride. For him, it was a long-awaited moment. Finally, his brother could fight alongside him. The next morning they began. Nolan led this training session, putting Mark through the basics. Kakarot observed from the sidelines, his arms crossed as he watched Mark struggle and improve in real time. At first, things went well. Mark picked up on his flight, balance, and strength quickly, but this training session took a turn when Nolan delivered a punch far harder than intended. Mark clutched his stomach and groaned in pain. Kakarot remained still, not interfering. He trusted Nolan's methods, even if they were rough. Still, he made a mental note to talk to Mark and checked on him later. Being a hero wasn't easy, and learning to fight came with pain. The next day at school, Mark and William chattered as they passed through the building, until once again, Todd made an appearance. Still bitter from the previous day, Todd shoved Mark up against the locker, pressing his forearm into his chest and sneering down at him. He taunted Mark, asking where his spiky-haired freak of a friend was. Mark didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly gave Todd a challenge. He hit him as hard as he could. Todd, confused but without hesitation, threw a punch. His fist connected with Mark's face, but Mark didn't budge. Not a single wince. Todd stumbled back, stunned. The hallway quieted again. Todd's expression twisted with fear and confusion. He called Mark a freak, just like he did to Kakarot, and backed away, retreating before anyone else could see him falter again. Later on, he decides to release some stress. Frustrated and eager to prove himself, Mark threw himself into a chaotic fight with Titan, the rock-like criminal who had been making waves in the city. The battle was chaotic. Mark gave it his all, fists flying, blood pumping, but he was unrefined, emotional, and reckless. His punches lacked control. His strategy was non-existent. Though he eventually gained an upper hand, it came with a cost of heavy damage to the city block around him. Then, in the midst of the aftermath, Omni-Man descended from the sky. Nolan's face was hard and unreadable. He surveyed the destruction, shattered windows, collapsed walls, and terrified civilians, and turned his eyes to Mark. With a measured disappointment, he pointed out the collateral damage, calling his son reckless and unready. His criticism stung more than any punch Mark had ever taken. Mark, overwhelmed and desperate, he asked him to be hit. He needed to prove himself in a real fight to show he was worthy of being called Omni-Man's son, to show he was worthy of being a Viltrumite. But Nolan didn't budge. Instead of violence, he offered reassurance. He told Mark that he did believe him, and that he always had. The sincerity in Nolan's voice cut deeper than any insult. Mark, caught off guard by the rare softness in his father's words, stepped forward and embraced him. The tension broke. For a moment, they were just father and son again. To Mark, this was a new beginning. Nolan brought Mark to meet Art Rosenbaum, the legendary tailor of heroes. Art welcomed them in, and after trying out a few suits, he commented that he wanted something that was iconic. The following day was different. A father and son playing catch, their throws launching a ball across continents and oceans. But beneath the fun, Mark's thoughts turned inward. As they threw, he confessed his fears, the pressure of being a hero, the worry of not living up to expectations, and the gnawing doubt that maybe he wasn't ready for this life. Nolan's answer was simple. Fear was natural, but the difference between heroes and others is what they do despite of that fear. He told Mark that most kids his age only feel invincible. But Mark actually was. Inspired by his father's words, Mark flew straight to Art's shop and declared he had made his decision. He had chosen his name. Later that evening, he perched himself atop a construction crane. He rose into the air. Beside him, soaring just as confidently, was Kakarot. The brothers in arms cruised through the skies until a streak of light broke the peace. A laser, red and hot, blew nearby buildings. In the distance, Kill Cannon, a dangerous supercriminal, was exchanging fire with city police. Energy blast from his cannon reduced patrol cars to molten scrap, and the arriving officers were outmatched. Kakarot didn't hesitate. In an instant, he raised his hand and fired a control key blast near Kill Cannon's feet, halting his movements without causing him harm. It was a warning. Moments later, Mark crashing into the scene like a comet, driving his fist into Kill Cannon's chest and sending him flying through the building's walls and down the pavement. The villain groaned and twitched, unable to move, defeated before he could even react. As the dust settles, the two teens stood above the wreckage. But while the city slept a little easier, darkness was brewing. Far away, inside the Guardians of the Globe's headquarters, Omni-Man stood alone. His chest rose and fell with heavy, strained breaths. His costume was torn and soaked in blood, none of it his own. Around him, the bodies of the Guardians lay broken and lifeless. One by one, they had fallen to him, unable to comprehend why one of the world's greatest heroes had turned against them. But for Nolan, the time for pretending had ended. With Mark's powers finally manifesting, the final phase of his mission had begun. The Guardians had been Earth's strongest line of defense, and now they were gone. The goal was simple: weaken the planet, remove its protectors, pave the way for Viltrumite conquest. Yet, a part of Nolan remained conflicted. Mark's potential was promising, and Kakarot's strength was even greater. Though not of Viltrumite blood, Kakarot had proven himself a warrior far beyond expectations. He was strong, adaptable, and fearless. In truth, Nolan hoped that Kakarot would join him. The boy had always looked up to him, trusted him. If anyone could understand the importance of Viltrumite's cause, it would be Kakarot. Or so he hoped. And if the two of them stood by Nolan's side, there would be no force on Earth that could oppose them. But deep down, Nolan knew Kakarot's heart belonged to the people of this world. He couldn't help but wonder if he should have raised them with traditional Viltrumite ideologies instead of playing a role as Earth's strongest protector. Now, it was far too late for that. The blood had been spilt, the stage was set, and the world, Mark, Kakarot, and the others will soon learn the truth. The morning began like any other. Mark Grayson and Kakarot were getting ready for school. The usual chaos echoed through the house until Debbie, their mother, made her way to the door. But when she opened it, she wasn't met by sunlight or a breeze. Instead, a group of GDA agents stood waiting. Without ceremony, the agents informed them that they were needed immediately. No time for questions, no time for hesitation. The car ride was quiet. Even Kakarot, usually carefree and loud, sensed the tension in the air. Something was off. They arrived at an undisclosed GDA facility and were ushered into a sterile room. That's when they saw him, Nolan, their father, lying motionless on a hospital bed, bandaged and unconscious. Not a word came from his mouth, not even a twitch. Cecil Stedman entered the room, calm and composed as ever. Kakarot was already familiar with the old man. Cecil would introduce himself to Mark. Then, he got straight to the point. The Guardians of the Globe were dead. Each and every one of them had been killed in a single night. Their strongest defenders were wiped out in what Cecil described as a calculated ambush. Nolan, Omni-Man, was the only survivor, found unconscious at the scene. They didn't know who did it. They had no leads, no suspects, only the grim aftermath. Cecil explained that the world didn't know it yet. The media blackout was temporary, but the truth would soon break through. Still, he wanted the family to hear it first, to process the loss, and to prepare. Just then, Donald Ferguson burst into the room with urgent news. An attack was underway, multiple casualties. Without hesitation, Kakarot and Mark left, launching into the air, streaks of light cutting through the clouds as they made their way into the battlefield. What they saw was pure chaos. A massive alien army had descended upon the city. Tanks rolled through the streets, buildings crumbled under the weight of their invasion, and civilians screamed as laser fire rained down from all sides. Mark landed near the central tank formation and raised his hand to stop the assault. But before he could finish his warning, a massive energy cannon erupted, blasting him backwards and vaporizing several people caught in the crossfire. The sight was overwhelming. Blood, screams, destruction. The weight of responsibility paralyzed him. He was no longer sparring in the backyard or punching out petty crooks. This was his first real battle. Kakarot shouted at his brother to snap out of it, but Mark couldn't move. His hands trembled. An energy blast ripped through the air, targeting an old woman who had fallen while trying to escape. Kakarot bolted forward, stabbing the beam away with his bare hand and shielding her with his body. That jolt was enough. Mark snapped out of his daze, grabbed the woman, and flew her to safety. Reinforcements soon arrived. The team descended into the fray, each member already moving with practiced precision. Robot took control of the situation, quickly assessing the enemy's formation and relating instructions to the team. He warned Eve of enemy tanks that were lining up to fire on her position. Without flinching, she retaliated with a wave of pink energy, obliterating them before they could lock on. Robot continued issuing commands, coordinated the defense as best as he could. Duplicate and Rexplode dove into the heart of the battle, their teamwork fluid and effective. As for Kakarot, he was a different story altogether. Eve glanced toward him and froze. He wasn't just fighting, he was enjoying it. The spiky-haired warrior tore through the alien invaders with a kind of wild, brutal grace. Beams of energy danced across his palms, bones shattered beneath his strikes. He smiled as he fought, his eyes burning with adrenaline and joy. To the others, it might have been disturbing, but to Kakarot, it was natural. This was instinct, the thrill of battle, the test of strength. It made him feel alive. Invincible returned to the battlefield, fighting alongside Kakarot. The alien invaders continued to press forward, only to be met by Kakarot's relentless assault. He weaved through the blast, launched enemies into the air, and followed them with devastating uppercuts that cracked the sky. Then, just as quickly as the chaos began, it turned strange. The aliens started to falter. Their movement slowed, their weapons dropped. Some stumbled mid-stride, clutching their chest as if aging decades in seconds. Their skin sagged, their bones snapped. One by one, they began collapsing. Within moments, their ranks thinned to almost nothing. Then, in a desperate final move, what was left of the alien force retreated through a glowing portal. The light swallowed them whole and they were gone. The weight of the previous day hadn't left Mark. As he walked through the halls of school, his shoulders were hunched, his eyes were heavy, and his pace unbothered by anyone he bumped into. All he could think about was his father, Omni-Man, lying in a hospital bed unmoving, a symbol of invincibility now broken. William noticed something was off. He approached, called his name, but got no response until Mark finally told him the truth. His father had been attacked, badly hurt, and the people responsible were still unknown. William, shocked, offered words of encouragement, letting Mark know he'd always be there for him. But Mark's attention drifted somewhere else. Down the hallway, he spotted Kakarot talking casually to Eve Wilkins. Eve Wilkins, bright, confident, one of the team's most capable members. Mark walked up, still emotionally distant. Kakarot, ever the energetic presence, introduced his brother to Eve. She recognized Mark from the fight against the factions. The blue and yellow suit had become memorable. He called himself Invincible, and she remarked how optimistic the name sounded. Eve learned that Mark was still new to this, having only gotten his powers. Kakarot, on the other hand, had already been active for some time. He was no stranger to the world of capes and chaos, having crossed paths with Eve and a team more than once before. The three of them made their way to the rooftop. The wind whipped gently across the quiet edge of the school as they sat together, their legs dangling into the open air. They talked about powers, about pressure, about purpose. Eve was surprised of how quickly Mark had jumped into hero life, and despite the nerves and mistakes, she admitted he did well for a rookie. Kakarot agreed, saying his brother had potential. He just needed confidence and experience. Before the bell could ring, Eve extended an invitation to them. After school, she would take them to the team base. They would agree. The trio soared above the city. Kakarot flew effortlessly, his form cutting clean through the sky. Eve and Mark followed, weaving past skyscrapers above bridges. They landed on top of the roof of a building. Then the ground opened. It was revealed to be the team's base. Mark descended behind Kakarot and Eve. Inside, they were greeted by Robot, the calculating voice and brain behind the team. Duplicate also offered a welcoming nod. Robot quickly got to the point. The Flaxons, the alien invaders from before, were not gone for good. Their retreat had not been permanent. In fact, they were already showing signs of returning. He asked Invincible directly, could they count on him in the future? With some hesitation, Mark agreed. The next day, at school, the weight of superhero responsibilities hadn't lightened. Mark, Kakarot, and Eve skipped lunch and ducked away from classes to meet up with the teen team again. Whatever normalcy they had before was gone. Rex Blode, another member of the teen team, wasn't thrilled to see them arrive together, especially Kakarot and Eve. He asked why they had shown up as a trio. Eve calmly reminded him that they all went to the same school. Not everyone had skipped high school the way Rex did. Robot cut through the tension. The Flaxons were back, but this time, things were different. Somehow, the Flaxons had adapted. Their previous weakness, rapid aging caused by time distortion, had been neutralized. They had figured out how to resist Earth's time stream. This was no longer just another incursion. This was a full-scale invasion in the making. Eve turned to Mark, asking if he was ready. He hesitated, his eyes flicked downward. The uncertainty still haunted him. Kakarot stepped forward and slapped his brother on the back, not harshly, but enough strength to wake him up. A gesture of confidence, a reminder that he was not alone. Mark stood up a little straighter after that. The world was shifting. Heroes were needed now more than ever. And while Mark still struggled to find his place in it, Kakarot, battle-hardened, fearless, and burning with energy, was always 2 steps ahead, dragging his brother into destiny whether he was ready or not. The teen team launched a coordinated assault against the Flaxons, but the aliens fought back with overwhelming technological superiority. Eve held them at bay with precise energy constructs, driving many back, but a capsule lashed onto her face, obscuring her vision and disorienting her. Mark moved quickly to block the beams fired from mounted cannons, but a trap ensnared him, an adhesive weapon that locked his limbs in place, pinning him to a car. Robot, analyzing the situation, recognized the Flaxons had used their time wisely, returning with more advanced tactics and equipment. Kakarot moved in with effortless precision and speed. He moved through the Flaxon lines, striking down enemies with devastating power. He shattered weapons, knocked back attackers with bursts of energy, and leapt from one foe to the next before they could even react. His raw physicality and natural instinct in combat shifted the momentum almost immediately. As the Flaxon leader closed in on Eve, energy building in his arm cannon, Kakarot intercepted the strike, tore the wristband from the alien's arm, and crushed it. The leader's body aged rapidly, collapsing into weakness. Kakarot removed the device from Eve's face, allowing her to breathe. At the same moment, Mark, still restrained, used all his power to break free. A shockwave tore through the immediate area, throwing enemies backward and scattering debris. The team quickly pieced it together. The wristbands were the key. With the tide turning, Kakarot used his speed to create afterimages, causing confusion among the Flaxons. Slipping and removing bracelets with surgical accuracy, Eve, regaining her footing, energy fields to target remaining bands. Robot would work on a frequency that would disrupt the devices. Rex and Duplicate joined in, destroying enemies as their technology began to fail. A sound wave emitted from Robot as the wristbands were destroyed one by one. The Flaxons began to rapidly age and fall. The survivors, recognizing their defeat, retreated from the battlefield. In the aftermath, Kakarot, calm and composed, stood among them. His presence now clearly etched into memory of the team as a turning point in the battle. Kakarot and Mark got to the hospital and found their father was awake now. Nolan said that Debbie had told him that they were keeping the planet safe and wanted to hear everything. Later, Nolan demanded that he got his suit back. Then, news broke that the Guardians had been missing for a week. At training, Mark tried attacking his father, who at first was able to dodge his punch. However, when Mark landed one, Nolan told him that he needed to be able to take one as well, and was about to punch him until Debbie interrupted. Cecil visited them and told them that they seen somebody approaching Earth. Debbie refused to let Nolan handle it, so Mark offered to do it himself. Kakarot would say that he would go, but he did not know how he would do in a vacuum of space. Nolan told Mark to knock some sense into the guy and send him back to where he came from. The two met in orbit. Invincible learned that this was Alan the alien, an evaluation officer for the Coalition of Planets. His job was to test each world's mightiest hero and ensure their planets were capable of defending themselves from intergalactic threats. After a brief exchange, confusion quickly surfaced. Alan realized that he had been visiting the wrong planet for over 10 years. It wasn't Earth he was supposed to evaluate, it was Urath. Despite the misunderstanding, the two found mutual respect for one another before Alan finally departed, promising to inform the Coalition about his mistake. The following day, chaos once again erupted. The factions returned to Earth, stronger, faster, and better equipped than ever before. The previous defeats had only hardened their resolve. The team mobilized quickly, but this time the difference in power was clear. The factions had found a way to resist aging from Earth's time stream, making them harder and more dangerous than before. However, before the situation could spiral into catastrophe, Omni-Man intervened. His appearance was more like a meteor descending from the clouds. His impact alone caused shockwaves that sent faction troops flying. His sheer power dwarfed everyone else's. With brutal precision, he forced his way through the portal, taking the battle into their world. The invasion ended almost quickly as it began. When Omni-Man returned, his beard had grown thick and unkempt. Kakarot, Mark, and Deblu were simply relieved that he was back. But before they could truly settle, the news broke. A televised report confirmed the worst. The Guardians of the Globe were dead. Officially, publicly, the world mourned its greatest heroes. A private funeral was held in their honor. Not long after, fractures within the team began to show. Adam Eve, still processing the Guardians' deaths, discovered Rex Blode's betrayal. The revelation hit hard. Rex had been cheating on her with Duplicate. She ended up leaving without looking back. When the new Guardians of the Globe lineup was announced, Eve refused the invitation to join. She couldn't bring herself to stand beside Rex again. She walked out of the Pentagon, Kakarot following her. He wasn't one to get involved in emotional affairs, but seeing her like that struck something within him. She was hurt, betrayed, and unsure of her place. He followed her into the skies, Eve revealing that Rex had cheated. Soon after, a new crisis struck. The culprit was none other than Doc Seismic. Invincible and Kakarot were called to respond. On their way, they ran into Eve, who had taken upon herself to intervene. The three joined forces effortlessly, combining their strengths in a way that felt natural. Kakarot moved like lightning, dodging blasts of molten rock and disarming Doc Seismic robotic gauntlets with precise strikes. Eve used her energy constructs to hold collapsing debris, while Invincible focused on getting civilians to safety. Together, they subdued the villain. Eve arrived at the Grayson household. She wasn't looking for Mark, but rather someone else. When she peered through the window, she saw Mark in bed with Amber, the two sharing an intimate moment. Moving to the next window, she tapped softly. The blinds lifted, and there he was, Kakarot. His eyes met hers, curious at first, but then softening with familiarity. He let her inside without hesitation. Eve found comfort in his presence. He wasn't judgmental or dismissive, just there, reliable, strong, and someone who didn't overcomplicate things. Meanwhile, Mark was given a mission of his own. The Global Defense Agency needed someone to escort a group of astronauts on an expedition to Mars. Normally, Omni-Man would have taken this mission for himself, but he was still recovering. Mark volunteered in his place, determined to prove himself as a capable hero. It was his chance to step out of his father's shadow. While Invincible left Earth behind for the vast red landscape of Mars, Kakarot remained on the planet, finding himself with unexpected free time. He began spending more time with Eve. Their interactions became a routine. Eve was still fighting herself, trying to figure out what kind of hero she wanted to be without the team or the new Guardians. Kakarot encouraged her to keep pushing forward, even when she doubted herself. Meanwhile, far away on Mars, Mark's mission spiraled out of control. The astronauts he was meant to protect encountered hostile Martians that wanted to execute the astronauts. They all managed to escape to safety, not without a Martian taking place of one of the astronauts, leaving the astronaut known as Russ Livingston to be possessed by a Sequid. Titan stood before his boss, Machine Head. Titan extended a chip towards him. Machine Head took it, fitting it into the port of his temple. Titan declared that he was done working for him, but the robotic human only laughed. He told Titan that he wasn't a partner, he was a tool, a blunt instrument meant to break skulls on command. The threat wasn't even subtle. Machine had made it clear. Titan would work for him until the day he broke for good. Titan's fist clenched, and in a flash of frustration, he slammed his hand into Machine Head's desk, splintering it into pieces. The villain only chuckled and said that outburst proved his point. Later on, two streaks blazed across the Chicago sky. Invincible and Kakarot raced side by side through the clouds, cutting through the wind with effortless speed. It wasn't a competition, but it always felt like one. As they passed over the city, Invincible's attention was caught by a message painted on the rooftop. His name, written in giant yellow letters. He descended with Kakarot following curiously behind. On the rooftop stood Titan, waiting. Invincible remembered him, the man who had once been a criminal. He told Mark that criminal wasn't a word that fit his life, it was survival. He explained that he was done breaking heads for Machine Head, done being used. He needed help to take down his boss once and for all. Invincible hesitated. This wasn't what heroes did. He was supposed to stop alien invasions, not fight organized crime. But Kakarot's eyes narrowed. He could recognize the sincerity when he saw it. Titan wasn't lying. He was a man trapped in a system stronger than himself. Kakarot said nothing, but his expression told Invincible to listen. Sometimes helping one person could save 100 more. He showed them what Machine Head's building looked like. Real people suffered every day under Machine Head's rule. Titan told them that if they helped him take Machine Head down, they could change lives, not in an abstract heroic sense, but for the families living right here and right now. He revealed his reason for doing it, his daughter. Everything depended on him getting out of this life alive. Kakarot said nothing more, but his gaze softened. He understood. Invincible finally nodded, deciding to help. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. Back at home, Debbie, Mark, and Kakarot sat together while Nolan watched them with his usual stoic gaze. Mark recounted what happened with Titan, the plan to take down Machine Head. Nolan's expression darkened. He told them that it was a mistake. Titan was using them. Street level crime was beneath them. Their purpose was to protect humanity from cosmic level threats, not get dragged into gang wars. Debbie frowned. She didn't agree. She told her that sometimes people weren't who they appeared to be, but that helping others was never beneath anyone. The next day after school, Titan stood waiting on top of the rooftop of an abandoned warehouse, where Invincible Kakarot arrived. He didn't waste any time. The plan to take down Machine Head was finally in motion. Invincible wasn't fully convinced though. Isotope could teleport anyone or anything in and out in the room in seconds. Taking Machine Head down sounded impossible, but Titan reassured them. Isotope wouldn't be a problem. He claimed to have already taken care of it. The mission was simple. Get in, capture Machine Head, and led him over to the Global Defense Agency. They eventually broke into the building, but Machine Head didn't move. His voice, smooth and robotic, revealed that he had expected their arrival. He'd known the exact moment they would strike. The very chip Titan had stolen from him earlier had given him the data he needed to predict their every move. Before they could react, the air shimmered and suddenly Isotope appeared beside Machine Head. Machine Head explained that while Invincible and Kakarot might have heart, they were out of his league, but money had its advantages, and that advantage was standing in front of them right now. With a single command, Isotope teleported several figures into the room, hired supervillains, mercenaries across the world and beyond, each one stronger and more ruthless than the last. Then chaos erupted. The room exploded into motion as the villains attacked. Titan swung with raw power, his rocky fist shattering furniture and denting steel walls. Invincible flew headfirst into the fight, slamming one mercenary through the table. Kakarot's movements were a blur, his strikes precise and devastating. From high above, unseen in the sky, Omni-Man watched silently, arms crossed, observing every move. The fight intensified. One villain, a man capable of generating electricity, lunged at Invincible, his lightning bolt slamming into his body, his muscles seized, pain tearing through his nerves as he fell into the floor. Titan roared, trying to reach him, but in a wave of molten flame engulfed him. His body glowed red hot as he stumbled back, burned but still standing. Then the air changed. A sudden explosion of power burst from Invincible as his fury took hold. He launched himself forward. In an instant, two mercenaries were out of the fight, their bodies strewn like ragdolls across the room. But his moment of strength ended quickly as it began. A massive figure appeared behind him, a beast covered in white fur and light armor. Battle Beast. With a single motion, the alien warrior grabbed Invincible by the head and slammed him into the floor. The impact echoed through the entire tower. Invincible tried to fight back, but Battle Beast's strength was overwhelming. The alien warrior struck again and again, cracking bones, spilling blood. Invincible was being nearly unconscious, his body crumpling beneath the weight of every blow. Kakarot froze for half a second, watching his brother's blood smear the floor. Then something inside him snapped. His aura flared violently, lighting the room. His muscles tightened, veins bulging as an inhuman roar ripped through his throat. The building trembled. His dark eyes turned a fierce yellow, his hair spiking upward. The transformation wasn't subtle, it was primal, raw, fueled by fury. Golden light erupted around him as the Saiyan unleashed his power. In a blur of motion, Kakarot fired a massive ki blast straight at Battle Beast, blasting him through the window. The explosion of glass ran across the city as both warriors shot into the sky. Kakarot followed instantly, his speed breaking through the sound barrier. They crashed onto the streets below, the impact creating a crater that sent shockwaves through the area. Kakarot landed on top of Battle Beast, his fist slamming down like hammers. Each punch sent tremors through the ground. The beast laughed through the blood. This was what he lived for, the thrill of battle. But Kakarot wasn't fighting for pleasure, his rage was pure and focused. He pounded Battle Beast into the dirt, breaking his armor and fracturing the earth beneath them. Every strike carried the weight of his anger. Battle Beast grinned. Even as blood poured from his mouth, he swung his mace, but Kakarot dodged effortlessly, catching with a devastating kick that shattered the weapon in half. The beast staggered back, dazed. Kakarot moved faster than I could see, slamming his fist into Battle Beast's chest and sent him flying through a building. For a moment, silence followed, then a low growl. Battle Beast crawled from the rubble. He was injured, but his armor was cracked. But his spirit was also unbroken. He lunged forward again, his hand gripping Kakarot's shoulder before sinking his teeth into his flesh. Kakarot roared, pain flooding his senses as Battle Beast tore through his muscle and skin. The Saiyan responded with a brutal punch that sent Battle Beast skidding across the street. The alien stood, blood dripping from his mouth, and began to clap. Slow, deliberate, filled with satisfaction. Despite his wounds, he was grinning. He had found a worthy opponent. Battle Beast pressed a button on the device strapped to his wrist. A yellow portal opened behind him. The alien warrior looked at Kakarot one last time, a silent acknowledgement of respect. Then he stepped through the portal, disappearing into the void. Kakarot stood there, breathing heavily, his golden light slowly dimming until his hair returned to normal. His body was covered in bruises and blood, but his resolve burned brighter than ever. He looked toward the sky, where Omni-Man had been watching, but Nolan was already gone. Invincible's rushed to the hospital. The fight had shown him the true brutality of the world, that even heroes could fall when faced with forces far beyond their league. Kakarot stood silently at the hospital's window. His expression was grim. He had witnessed his brother nearly die before his eyes. Though his same blood yearned for challenge, what he felt during that fight wasn't thrilling. It was fury, pure, consuming anger. Days passed. When Mark finally recovered and returned to school, things felt almost normal, at least on the surface. But beneath that smile, doubt gnawed at him. Was he really strong enough to protect anyone? William then mentioned that he'd be heading to Upstate University for a tour with Rick, a boy he liked. He was nervous but excited, and Mark saw opportunity to escape the weight of being invincible for a day. He suggested tagging along with Amber, hoping to relax and reconnect with her after everything that had happened. Kakarot, however, declined. He told them to have fun, offering a reassuring grin before walking off. On the surface, it seemed like he just wanted some time alone, but the truth was more complicated. The events of Machine Head had also shaken him to the core, not because of fear, but because of realization. Battle Beast, the alien warrior who had nearly killed Mark, wasn't even fighting at his full strength, and yet Kakarot had been pushed, not defeated, but challenged. The realization burned inside him. He needed to grow stronger. Later that afternoon, as Kakarot sat in his room, he heard a soft knock on his window. It was Eve. She greeted him with a smile. Eve asked about Mark, and Kakarot told her that Mark had gone on a university trip. Then with curiosity, he asked her what she was planning to do next. College maybe? Her answer caught him off guard. She said she wasn't going to college at all. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to waste time pretending to help people on paper when she could actually help them right now. Kakarot listened carefully, nodding as she spoke. Most people wouldn't have understood her decision, but he did. She was doing something he had done all his life, using power not for pride, but to protect, to serve, to make things better. He told her that they were a lot alike. Not heroes who fought for fame, but individuals who fought because they had to, because it was the right thing to do. Night came. Nolan finally returned. His expression was unreadable, but his wife, Debbie, was waiting. She was furious, broken by suspicion and fear. She had found his suit, bloody, damaged, and hidden. She confronted him, demanded answers. Nolan denied it. His tone was calm but detached, and that only fueled her rage. She threw a bottle of wine at him, Nolan catching it. He called her drunk, and her response was filled with venom and despair. The man she loved was lying to her face. He clenched his fist. In a sudden flash of anger, he shattered the empty bottle in his hand, punching a hole straight to the wall. The next morning, Eve and Kakarot woke up in her treehouse in the deep woods. She made them coffee, the two side by side, watching the horizon. But elsewhere, Debbie was waking to a nightmare. She came downstairs to find Nolan waiting for her. The tension was suffocating. She asked him again why he kept his suit. His answer was practice, deliberate. He said he used it to take care of Damien Darkblood, the demon detective who had been investigating him, but then his tone shifted. He suggested that maybe he wanted her to find it. Maybe it was time for her to know the truth. He told her he hadn't been blackmailed, that he could have told her everything months ago, that he wanted to. He asked her to trust him. But Debbie couldn't, not anymore. Tears filled her eyes as she told him she couldn't trust a man who murdered their friends. Nolan tried to justify it. He didn't have a choice, that everything he had done was necessary. She screamed at him to get out of her house. Without another word, Nolan's eyes narrowed. He turned away, a hole straight through the ceiling, and flew off into the sky. Debbie tried to calm herself, clutching the phone. Her hands trembled when she dialed the number, Kakarot's, but there was no answer. Mark, no answer. Back at the Grayson home, agents suddenly made their presence known. The Global Defense Agency had arrived. Donald, Cecil's trusted operative, looked at her with an expression of mixed sympathy and duty. He told her she needed to come with them for her safety. Her husband, Omni-Man, the most powerful being on Earth, had become their greatest threat. And somewhere out there, Kakarot and Mark still didn't know what was happening. After weeks of suspicion and fear, the truth about Nolan Grayson, Omni-Man, was on the verge of exposure. Debbie Grayson sat in the sterile halls of the Global Defense Agency. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted answers. When Cecil Stedman appeared, she demanded to know why he had kept Nolan's secret from her, why he hadn't warned her about the monster living under her roof. Cecil, ever the tactician, didn't flinch. He told her the truth, or at least a version of it. They couldn't risk Nolan finding out they knew, not until they understood his motives, not until they knew how to stop him. Omni-Man wasn't just another superhuman. He was a Viltrumite. He was an alien, a god among men. And even worse, he was angry. Cecil's voice grew quiet as he admitted something chilling. There might be only two people alive who could fight Omni-Man and stand a chance. Mark and Kakarot. But when he asked where they were, Debbie's voice trembled. She told him that it wouldn't happen. She couldn't bear the thought of her sons fighting their own father. While she struggled with fear and grief, miles away, Nolan was preparing for something far different. He rehearsed how he would tell his sons the truth, that he had killed the guardians of the globe. He convinced himself it was his duty, his responsibility, that Mark and Kakarot, his sons, would understand why he had done it. But Nolan's calm facade cracked when he arrived home and found the house empty. His eyes darted across the silent rooms and until he spotted movement. The agent barely had time to react before Omni-Man's hand gripped his armor and slammed him onto the floor. The shockwave rattled the entire house. More agents opened fire, their bullets ricocheting effortlessly off his skin. Nolan's fear ignited. He tore through them like paper, every move precise, calculated, and brutal. One agent reached for something. He reached for a house across the street. His eyes burned with rage. He walked straight past the drywall and entered the room with monitors. Donald, the low GTA agent, stood his ground as Omni-Man confronted him. Donald explained that the house had been for their protection, that they were trying to keep Debbie and the boys safe. Nolan's expression twisted into disgust. He told Donald that he had always been pathetic, weak, and with a swift movement, Nolan crushed Donald's spine. As he fell, Donald's voice echoed through the comms, his last words steady and loyal. He had told Cecil it had been an honor, and triggered the detonator. The house exploded in a brilliant flash of fire and debris, the shockwaves shaking the nearby streets. From the GA command center, Debbie covered her mouth in shock as she watched the explosion unfold. Cecil stood beside her, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. Debbie turned to him, voice trembling. She said that Nolan would find Mark and Kakarot next, and didn't know what he would do when he did. Cecil nodded grimly. They had to find that before Nolan did. Mark flew alongside Eve, and Kakarot joined them soon after. But that peace wouldn't last. William was driving home from his university trip. The wind roared, the car shook, and a shadow descended beside him. It was Omni-Man. His cape fluttered in the wind as his boots touched down on the road. William stammered out a greeting, asking if he was okay, but Nolan didn't answer. His tone was flat, cold. He wanted to know where Mark was. William told him that Mark had gone with Eve. The car groaned under Nolan's tightening grip as his hand pressed against the hood, leaving a deep dent in the metal. He gave up Eve's location, desperate to make him leave, and just like that, Nolan shot into the sky. Cecil stared at the monitors, watching the dots on the radar screen. One green for Mark, one orange for Kakarot, and one pink for Eve. And one red, racing towards them with impossible speed, was Omni-Man. 6 minutes out, they needed to buy time, and Cecil had just the weapon to do it. High above Earth's orbit, a massive satellite came to life. The G-Day's orbital defense cannon. The barrel began to glow, channeling a beam of pure destructive light. A colossal beam of energy descended from orbit, striking him dead on. The force shook the planets, vaporizing everything in a mile-wide radius. The shockwave leveled entire sections of the forest. Animals scattered in panic, only to be consumed by the roaring inferno. A figure emerged from the smoke. Omni-Man stood tall in the center of the crater, his eyes burning with unrestrained fury. He wiped blood from his nose and looked up towards the sky. The satellite fired again, and this time no one didn't even try to dodge. He flew straight to the beam, ripping through the energy and destroying the satellite with one punch. Back at the G-Day headquarters, the room fell silent. Cecil exhaled sharply, muttering that 400 billion was just spent for a nosebleed. Nolan is attacked by Sinclair's cyborgs, which put up a fight with him, but he tries to get them off. He fights the monsters and rips them apart. Debbie buried her face in her hands. Omni-Man was unstoppable, and he was still coming. Mark and Eve had no idea the man flying toward them wasn't coming to protect them, and Kakarot, the same protector of Earth, was about to face his greatest test yet, because even for someone like him, fighting a Viltrumite wasn't just another battle. It was a war of ideologies, a clash of two beings who had been born for conquest, yet chose two very different paths. One fought for the love of the game, the other fought for dominance. Nolan Grayson soared through the skies. He locked eyes with yet another beast rising from destruction. It was the same creature he had claimed to slay before, but something was different this time. The monster moved faster, and his blows were harder. Two news helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the fight live across the globe. Civilians, heroes, and government officials all watched as Omni-Man engaged the monster with explosive force. Every punch sent shockwaves through the air. Nolan struck the creature in the gut. The monster retaliated instantly. The Omni-Man's breath grew ragged as he tried to regain altitude, but the creature's claws hooked around his throat, dragging him down again. Eve, still in the air, got a call from an unknown number. It was from Debbie. The panic was unmistakable. Debbie tells her to get to safety. But Cecil's tone was grim when he communicated with Eve. He ordered her not to help them, not to interfere. The monster wasn't the real threat now. He needed her at the Guardians HQ immediately. Reluctantly, she turned away. Nolan, Mark, and Kakarot stood together, fighting against the towering monster below. The creature rose again, roaring with renewed ferocity. The air exploded as the three heroes collided with it. Omni-Man struck first, driving his fist through the creature's chest and tearing through bone. Kakarot followed, striking its spine with a burst of ki that burned through its hide. Mark came in last, driving it into the ground force. Together, the three unleashed a storm of power. Kakarot's energy being shredded to the creature's limbs. Omni-Man tore through his organs, and Mark drove blow after blow into its head. The kaiju thrashed, roaring in blind rage until finally, after one last earth-shattering impact, it went still. The monster lay motionless, its body charred and broken. Smoke and blood filled the air. For a moment there was silence. Mark smiled, breathing heavily, ready to celebrate. He looked to his father, expecting approval, pride, anything, but Nolan wasn't looking at him. His expression was blank. It was cold. Then Before any of them could speak, a blur streaked across the sky. Immortal crashed into the scene like a meteor, his roar echoing. His fury was unmatched. Without hesitation, he launched himself at Omni-Man, raining down blows with fueled pure rage. The ground splintered beneath them. Kakarot floated back, confusion flashing across his face. He didn't understand. He could sense the fear in Immortal strikes, the betrayal in his words. He heard accusations, claims that Omni-Man had murdered the Guardians of the Globe. Mark froze. The words didn't make sense. His father, the hero who had taught him everything, couldn't have done something like that. Could he? Kakarot's fist clenched. His instincts screamed at him that something was wrong. He'd fought beside Omni-Man, trusted him, respected his power, but now, as the two titans tore into each other, there was no honor, no restraint, only bloodlust. Immortal's strength was immense, but Omni-Man's fury was greater. He caught Immortal mid-strike, twisted, and drove his arm clean straight to the veteran hero's chest. The sound was sickening. Kakarot and Mark watched that in horror as Omni-Man lifted Immortal's body high, then tore it apart with savage force. Blood rained down like a crimson storm. The news helicopters caught everything, the violence, the gore, the undeniable truth. The world watched as Omni-Man, Earth's greatest protector, slaughtered one of his oldest heroes in cold blood. Kakarot's aura flickered violently. His power surged, his emotions spiraling. Every fiber in his being screamed to intervene, to stop this madness. But Mark stood frozen beside him, paralyzed by disbelief. Nolan turned to them, his face soaked in blood. For a moment, the three stood there in silence. Then Nolan spoke. He told them that they needed to talk. Mark's heart broke. Kakarot's fury burned harder than ever. Above them, the cameras continued rolling. Across the globe, people stared at their screens in shock and terror. The truth about Omni-Man was no longer hidden. The perfect image of Earth's mightiest hero had crumbled, and in its place stood a monster, a conqueror. But floating in front of him were two wild cards, a son torn between love and betrayal, and a sane warrior whose sense of justice would not allow what he had just witnessed to go unchallenged. Omni-Man floated there silent. His expression was a mixture of regret and grim resolve. He tried to reach his sons to explain, but Mark was too far gone. His entire world was just shattered. Mark lunged forward, his fist charged with fury. Omni-Man dodged effortlessly, avoiding Mark's strikes. He tried to reason with him, to calm him down. Kakarot stepped in between them, his aura flaring, warning his father to stop. Then Nolan said it. The words that broke everything. He admitted it. He wasn't being controlled. He wasn't under influence. He had done it all, of his own will. Nolan began to explain about Viltrum, about their mission, about the empire that had conquered countless worlds across the galaxy. He told them of the Purge, how the weak were slaughtered, leaving only the strong to rebuild. He told them that they were never meant to save Earth. They were meant to rule it. Mark's heart sank. Every memory, every moment with his father twisted into something ugly. The man who had taught him to protect people was only preparing him to dominate them. Omni-Man tried to rationalize with them. To him, it was all for the greater good. The unification of Earth under Viltrumite rule. Resistance was pointless, he said. Humans were fragile, fleeting. They would die in a blink of an eye while they lived for thousands of years. To Nolan, this was destiny. But when he spoke of Debbie, of how he still loved her, yet called her a pet, that was the breaking point. Mark's body trembled. The rage he'd been holding back erupted. He shouted that he would never be part of his father's empire, that he'd rather die than seeing Earth fall under Viltrumite rule, and beside him, Kakarot stood still, eyes burning with defiance. He declared his loyalty to Earth, not because he was born here, not because he chose it, raised as a human, taught compassion and courage. He wasn't the weapon Nolan wanted, he was a protector, and he died before letting anyone, even his own father, take that away. Omni-Man sighed, the last bit of warmth leaving his voice. His fist clenched, realized that there was no point of turning them. They were lost in human ideals, so he gave into his nature. The battle began. Omni-Man struck first, his fist crashing into Mark's chest and setting him through mountains of clouds. Kakarot flew in immediately, his body blazing with energy as he entered his Akari form. Mark rejoined the fight, diving from above to catch Nolan in the jaw. The three tore across the skies, punching through clouds, smashing into mountains, and carving destruction into the landscape below. Cecil, watching from the GDA, activated emergency measures. He sent jets to intercept, hoping to slow Nolan down. It was a desperate attempt. As they fought, Mark tried to reason with his father. He begged him to stop, to remember who he was, a man who saved people, who cared for Earth. But Nolan's heart was stone. To him, compassion was weakness. The jets arrived, unleashing everything they had, missiles straight to the air, explosions filled the horizon. But Nolan barely flinched. One by one, he destroyed them effortlessly. When the smoke cleared, only one pilot ejected, parachuting towards the ground. Mark rushed to catch him, saving him before he could hit the earth. For a brief moment, he felt relief until Nolan appeared beside him. With cold precision, Nolan crushed the pilot's skull like it was glass. Cecil could only watch in silence. Debbie's tears streamed down her face as she saw the true monster her husband had become. Kakarot snapped. His aura exploded outward, the glowing flames around him burned brighter, hotter. His muscles tightened, the ground beneath him cracking as energy surged. His roar shook the heavens. Omni-Man turned just in time to see his son's transformation. The golden-haired warrior that emerged wasn't the rowdy Kakarot he'd raised alongside Mark. This was something primal, something ancient. His eyes shone an icy blue, piercing through Nolan's confidence. In a blink, he was gone, moving faster than Nolan could track. The next movement, his fist slammed into Nolan's chest, setting the Viltrumite flying through the air like a meteor. The two collided again and again, shockwaves ripping through the sky. Kakarot unleashed a barrage of blows, each one heavier than the last. Nolan countered, but his strikes were weaker, slower, his composure slipping as Kakarot's fury intensified. On the ground below, Invincible could barely comprehend the power on display. He'd seen his brother fight before, but never like this. It was pure, unfiltered rage. Nolan spat blood, smiling grimly as he wiped the blood from his chin. He realized that Kakarot was no ordinary warrior. Omni-Man knew that whatever Kakarot was, it was not to be underestimated. He was a Saiyan, a warrior from another race of conquerors, one that thrived off of battle, and yet, unlike the Viltrumites, he'd chosen compassion over conquest. That made him something far more dangerous. Kakarot's aura flared again, his hand glowing with condensed energy. He shaped it into a blade of pure ki. He charged, ready to end it. The blade cut through the air towards Nolan's heart. But before he could land a final strike, Mark intervened. He shouted, reminding Kakarot who he was, a hero, not an executioner. Kakarot froze, his breathing heavy. He looked down on his father, bloodied and broken on the ground below. His anger began to fade, replaced by exhaustion and sorrow. His golden aura dimmed, the glow leaving his eyes. His hair fell back to black. The Super Saiyan was gone. Nolan lay motionless in the crater. GDA agents arrived. Nolan, barely conscious, was contained and restrained using bindings. The world watched as the once great protector of Earth was taken away in silence. Cecil ordered his imprisonment in a reinforced chamber deep beneath the agency, surrounded by layers of energy dampeners. Debbie refused to see him. Mark couldn't bring himself to visit, but Kakarot did. He stared down the broken warrior that was his father. There was no anger left, only sadness. Despite everything, Kakarot understood one truth. Nolan wasn't just a villain. He was a man consumed by the ideals of his own people, a man who believed that conquest was destiny. A few days after the imprisonment of Mark Grayson, the vastness of space called once more. Invincible was sent to the moon to meet a known ally, Alan the Alien, the Coalition evaluation officer. Alan had returned. Back on Earth, Kakarot and Mark visited their father, Nolan, in a reinforced cell. The reunion was tense, filled with unspoken questions and fragile trust. Nolan, for the first time, expressed a measure of humility. He apologized to his sons, acknowledging that Earth had changed him. He admitted he had not been ready to accept the truth of humanity, its resistance, or the value of individual choice. For a moment, the man who once embodied the Viltrumite ideal of conquest seemed smaller, more human. Mark, absorbing the weight of his father's confession, shared with him that he had learned about the Coalition of Planets. He told Nolan about their structure, their reach, and their plan to resist Viltrumite expansion. He spoke of the potential support in the inevitable rebellion. Nolan listened quietly, the weight of his past actions pressing down on him. For the first time, Nolan considered a future where his power could be used differently, not for domination but for protection. He realized that despite his own history, They had inherited something he had truly never understood: the courage to fight for something greater than themselves. Nolan made a choice. He would join the coalition in their cause. His knowledge of Viltrumite tactics, their strategies, and their weaknesses made him a valuable asset. He could not undo his past, nor erase the lives lost under his command, but he could ensure that others did not suffer the same fate.